Yes, good day, class. I'm going to have a class today on development studies, grade 11 geography, term 3. Before having anything done yet, I would want to appreciate and thank you so much for your loyalty to our channel, Metric Hub. It has been a while without having some new videos, but anyway, I'm here just to ensure that we go forward and everything that we have to cover is covered on time. So going forward, I'm sure that we are going to be having very good and fruitful lessons and videos that you are going to enjoy. Just feel free to engage, like, share, and comment. So therefore we can keep on having vital and fruitful videos and posts that will be able to sustain us during our course of studies. So without wasting any time, I would want us to just focus. I prepared some beautiful notes for you here. The notes that I think are going to be so comprehensive and developmental also to all of the grade 11 geography students. To begin with the definition of development, this is basically is the improvement in the standard of living and quality of life of people through better access to resources, services, income, and opportunities. So, in any case, we are saying if people have got access to resources and also services, income, and opportunities in a way it is actually development, which is an improvement in the standard of living of those people. At the end of the day, you would see that there is also improvement in the quality of life. It involves using resources to raise income levels. So what we are saying is that income levels would also increase. That results in reduced in the reduction of poverty and provide people with basic needs such as food. We have got access to food, access to clean water, education, housing, healthcare, and employment opportunities. So all these actually they provide basic, they are actually uh, facilitating development, which you would see and appreciate that resources are being used, and then the production or the consumption of resources would always result in increase in income levels of people. When income levels of people has increased, poverty it becomes less. Poverty, we are talking about being less privilege or less access to factors of production, which at the end of the day, people would not be able to meet the basic living standards. So income is actually improved because of employment opportunities. So development is not only about economic growth in other ways. We also need to understand that it includes the social, it includes political and environmental improvements that lead to better and more sustainable life for everyone. So, in other words, this is quite a very complex and a very big, what you call, spectrum of study that you need to understand that we are considering social, political, and environmental improvements, which at the end of the day would enable improvement or would lead to better and more sustainable life for everyone. And then let's look into other points to note or other points to look at. What other points are you supposed to understand? Development can be economic, which we also identified there. When it is economic, this has to do with wealth. It has to do with money. So we are looking at income, we are looking at jobs, which talked about job creation, industrial growth, which obviously would create employment and would also provide production. It also, it is also social. Development can also be social, which is I mean, which also encompasses education. It includes health. It includes equality. Equality is to say access to uh, various sectors of production of access to all the different areas of lives that people should have equally as a nation or as an individual. So equality, it has to do with nullification and reduction in factors or into ways through which people are segregated. So equality, it actually does away with discrimination. Every person has got access to these factors of production, which will also have to talk about equality with regards to economic in the context of the economic sense, that all people have got access to the wealth of the country, which we are talking about. Like, for example, it also involves the social grants as an example in regard to economic equality, which the rich can also have to share with the poor or the less privileged would also be able to access the wealth of the country. It includes environmental sustainability. Environmental sustainability as a country or as a world in general. Environmental sustainability remains one of the key fundamentals in terms of development, which has to do with using resources wisely. Using resources wisely, it also involves using resources sparingly, having to use resources with the understanding of future generations to come. That has to do with sustainable management or sustainable development, where we to understand that resources must not be finished. We talk about various sectors or various ways through which this can be done. We talk about environmental sustainability is reducing what you call reducing pollution. We talk about the replanting of trees or afforestation, uh, reducing all measures that can cause environmental degradation, and also using every other environmentally friendly practices that would not endanger or which would also not disturb the uh, the natural ecosystem and the natural environment. It also aims to improve people's quality of life, especially in less developed or rural and inland areas. In terms of the rural and inland areas, we are looking at areas that are far from the urban city or urban areas, whereby production or development is not as equally accessible as it is in developed areas. So improving the quality of life in the rural areas, it is also a facet that needs to be understood with regards to uh, development and also the equality of life that we have talked about in the giving an example in this case. Example, we are saying inland areas in South Africa may focus on rural development. As to say, we are talking about the inland or the inner regions of South Africa to provide better infrastructure, education, and also job opportunities so that people do not have to migrate to cities for better life. I'm sure that you understand quite a lot that human migration or population movement is one of the key factors or is one of the key indicators that also identifies inequalities or which also shows variations or differences in levels of development, which is existing mostly in between the rural and the urban. So South Africa also, in terms of development, it also puts an understanding and focus and emphasis as well as resources in rural development in order to empower and make better the rural areas through various ways which we can talk about the development and the improvement in infrastructure, job opportunities, education, as well as even recreational facilities, which would also reduce rural urban migration. So therefore, there will be a better life in the rural areas. I want us to understand and look at the key terminologies associated with development, the key terminologies that are associated with development. We have got developed countries, are nations with high levels of economic prosperity, technological advancement. These are characteristics that we are referring to or features that identifies developed countries. countries which have got high levels of economic prosperity, technological advancement, social well-being, characterized by factors like high GDP, which I'm sure that at grade 11 we understand gross domestic product. I'm going to further explain it anyway down there. Advanced infrastructure and access to education and healthcare. All these are identities or factors that would be put in context when we're talking about developed countries. And then they are typically high industrialized with strong economies and high living standards. As to say that mechanization is quite high or is quite at high levels when we talk about highly industrialized economies. Therefore, these economies result in mass production and also massive job creation, which would, at the end of the day, result in further development. So key characteristics in that regard, we can talk about one, high GDP and economic growth, which we are saying developed countries generally have got high gross domestic product and strong economic growth rates, indicating a big and productive economy, a robust, meaning to say big and big economy, which also results in productive uh, economies. We can talk about they also have advanced infrastructure, which we are in this regard need to understand that developed countries they have got advanced infrastructure, such as to say well-developed infrastructure, including transportation. We can identify the various forms of transport, which we can talk about road, railway, air, and all of them, to mention but a few of them, and energy systems that support their economies and daily lives. So in this case, we can talk about power supply in terms of the energy. To say power supply is very stable, that we cannot talk about load shedding. Power is readily available, and therefore the economy is actually balanced and is able to function on a daily basis. We have got high standards of living. Citizens in developed countries typically experience high standards of living with access to quality health care. We are talking about education. We need to identify other essential services, even insurance. We can talk about warehousing. We can talk about telecommunication systems. They are also identities of an economy that have got a good standard or high standard of living. So in that regard, I would want you to understand that these are also indicators that identify a developed economy or developed nations. So if people are able to have insurance, people are able to have access to quality health care, as in terms of it can be with regards to the precision in how medical services is provided. Diagnosis, it can be also be in forms of the treatment itself, and even the handling and uh, treatment of any other sophisticated diseases that might appear to be difficult, but in a developed country, because of highly technologically developed equipment, they are quite reliable, and they can also be able to treat and provide high quality health care as well as education to their people. So we can also need to talk about Human Development Index, which is I'm saying the Human Development Index also is another point that we need to talk about, which sometimes you would need to understand that uh, very various factors. It encompasses a lot of factors. The life expectancy. It talks about diet. It talks about these other social factors and so forth. They all fall into that category. And then equitable economic income distribution. Equitable income distribution are also good examples there, which we can talk about to say that income is readily accessible, is equally distributed amongst the population of the country. So while not always perfect, developed countries often have more equitable distribution of income compared to developing nations. So there are policies and what to call there are policies that are in place as well as acts and legislative instruments that enable nations or that would enable people to have equal access to what to their resources or wealth of the country as a whole. Access to technology, education, and healthcare. They are also factors or identities for a developed country, where developed nations generally provide widespread access to advanced technologies. We talk about high quality education. We also have comprehensive healthcare systems, as just explained above. We also talk about the technology, advanced technologies. Uh, Even right now, you give typical examples of forensic investigations. We have got highly sophisticated equipment and researches that are done with regards to advanced technologies. As we also want to identify and understand that developed countries have got stable birth and death rate, that people are living to their maximum. We have got full utilization of the human capital. So as a country, they tend to have more stable birth and death rates, indicating a balanced population growth. So if you look on the population pyramid of countries such as these ones, there is a very balanced mortality, as well as we are saying in terms of the number of death and the number of birth and death of the country, they equally balance. Hence, it results in a stable population growth, which is also sustained by other factors that we've talked about there, as high standards of living and also access to quality health facilities and health services. Examples in that case, we have got countries such as we can talk about United States of America, we have got Japan, we have got Germany. These are states or countries that are in good repute, in good standing, or good examples that we can mention with regards to uh, development benchmarks, in as to say that they are developed countries. And then we also need to look at developing countries. These are nations also. These are nations characterized by low standards of living. Developing is actually a direct contrast of the above. So they are characterized by low standards of living, less developed industrial bases. We also talk about lower human development index scores compared to the developed countries. They are often marked by reliance on primary industries. Developing countries, they heavily depend on primary or extractive industries, which include agriculture. We talk about which, I mean, and also may face challenges in areas like infrastructure and economic growth. So infrastructure is quite a difficult, or it's quite an outstanding challenge that is found in developing countries, such as we can talk about quite a lot of factors there in terms of the road networks, in terms of the telecommunication, in terms of what is in terms of health facilities and so forth. They are also not easily accessible as they are in developed countries. So we can give examples in that case, South Africa, we have got India, as to say the number of people to ratio of people to resources is always not corresponding. You would always find that most of the people, I mean, most of these countries, you have got a high population uh, density, or they've got a high population demand or certain services than the services are available. So we also have underdeveloped countries, which are nations with lower levels of economic development and social progress compared to other countries. That is, countries that are very poor. We are saying they also have low levels of development, weak infrastructure, and struggle with basic services. They struggle with basic services. In that case, we would want also to identify key characteristics of underdeveloped countries. Key characteristics of underdeveloped countries. These include low per capita income, which is one low per capita income. This is can be, we are saying, a key indicator in the low is the gross domestic product per person, how much production a person can have, reflecting lower overall economic output and individual wealth. So in any case, if a person is producing the lowest, it therefore means that the production that we can have, or the output that person is giving, relatively, it means that if it is very low, it means therefore a person has got lower production, and therefore it means that there is low income, because obviously we are saying gross domestic product per person, how much production a person has provided in a country measured over a period of a year. It actually indicates the output, the economic output, and therefore the individual's wealth. We also talk about limited industrial base. Limited industrial base, these countries may have a smaller in manufacturing sector and rely more on primary industries like agriculture that I have given. We are saying agriculture, farming, they are key factors, or we can talk about forestry as examples of activities that forms base in terms of what underdeveloped countries. We also want to look at poverty and inequality. Obviously, I said the moment you are able to identify factors and examples as well as characteristics of one, you will be actually giving, as to say, the direct opposite is also correct in the other contrast side of the matter. Therefore, we are saying poverty and inequality, high rates of poverty, income disparity, as to say, the difference between the poor and the rich is quite big. Hence, it results in what? In inequality, and at the end of the day, poverty is the main also factor that would also surface in that case. And the limited access to basic necessities are common. People have got no readily access to the basic services that would sustain their daily livelihoods, and therefore it's an indication of underdeveloping country. Weak infrastructure, it has been also mentioned as an indicator there. This can lead, this can include inadequate transportation, communication, and energy systems. Therefore, we are saying weak infrastructure, it indicates an underdeveloped economy, whereby inadequate transportation becomes a problem. Again, communication is not easy. You find out network overload when people would want to communicate or would receive services from telecommunication systems. Data connection, it is very expensive. Otherwise, sometimes also it's not everyone who can afford it. And where those who afford it is sometimes also congested, because the service providers also face challenges with regard to provisioning of that. Challenges in health and care sectors, in healthcare and education, there are also other factors that also identify a developing economy, underdeveloped economy, where healthcare and education may be limited, impacting human development. And then we also have lower levels of human development, which we also have given up there. This often is measured by Human Development Index, which considers factors such as life expectancy. I also mentioned them before that Human Development Index, it is looking at specific human factors that are affecting and impacting on livelihoods. So life expectancy, obviously, as you can see, we are talking about the average lifetime a person can live, which can also be in developing, underdeveloped, I mean, in the countries that are underdeveloped, people tend to die young because of various reasons and factors that we can identify, as to say, uh, no mechanization, which results in overworking in uh, in 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 primary sector, which also causes serious problems and health problems again. So in that case, we can have sub-Saharan Africa as some parts of that being good examples in this regard. And then we have got more economically developed countries, as this is also, we can also define it as developed countries, or the discussion and explanation can relate more or less similar to developed countries. These are, you've got high gross domestic product per person. We talk about high life expectancy. We have got good living conditions. We also have developed countries, also known as more economically developed countries, which is the we can give it in that regard as to say the MEDCs, and then countries that have high standards of living, income per person obviously is good, and then advanced infrastructure, good education, healthcare, and low poverty levels. These countries are highly industrialized, like we have mentioned before, and very urbanized. The development or building infrastructure itself, they are quite good. Good examples, we've got United States, Germany, and Japan, which I also have mentioned in the beginning there. So generally, people enjoy good quality of life and secure jobs there. So in that case, development now focuses on maintaining standards and sustainability. Then in that case, it only focuses on maintaining sustainability and standards. And then less economically developed countries, we are talking about other factors that are related, or terminologies related to development. This can also be discussed similar to developing countries. As to say, less economically developed countries, we can also discuss them as developing countries, which they've got lower GDP per person and then limited infrastructure. They actually have got lower living standards, low income, often face challenges such as poverty. We have got factors, problems of unemployment and then limited access to services. Men are still growing their economy and expanding their industries. Examples, we have got South Africa, we have got India, we also have Brazil, as to say they can be classified as less economically developed countries. Uh, we also need to understand that these countries, development actually means uplifting communities. In this sense, especially in inland rural areas where people may lack access to services and also jobs. Development efforts aim to reduce the gap between the rural and urban, which we have also talked about in the beginning there, that the aim of development is actually to reduce the gap between urban and rural regions so as to mitigate and reduce chances of rural urban migration. And then standard of living is other term related to development. It refers to the level of wealth, comfort, material goods, and services available to people in a country. So if people have got access to these in their in abundance, it therefore means that we can talk about high standards of living. So material goods, services, and also the comfort that people live in, if they are readily available, we are easily, or we can confidently classify that country as saying it has got a good standard of living or high standard of living. And then the level of wealth, comfort, necessities available for person, encompassing things such as income, access to healthcare, education, housing. It also often used as a measure of population's overall well-being and quality of life. So standard of living, actually it identifies the quality of life a person is living, which actually identifies or would classify a country as developed or developing. It is often measured per income, by income. It is measured by income per person, and mostly it includes material factors that I have mentioned before, such as housing. We talk about access to transportation, availability to consumer goods. People would need to have access to transportation, buying big, nice cars, brand new cars, having access to consumer goods, as to say goods that they can buy to eat and live as families. They should be readily available. And then quality of life also, quality of life factors, which also identifies as life expectancy, literacy rates, and environmental quality. All that is also very important when we discuss what we discuss standards of living. So standards of living cannot be good if life expectancy is low. standard of living cannot be good if literacy rate is high. So in that regard, we are saying all these relate to development. Quality of life, a broader term that includes not only wealth but also access to clean water, is also development. Education, healthcare, freedom, as well as environmental quality. And then in this case, I want to emphasize and place emphasis on what? On freedom, as to say that a developed country would also have freedom. Freedom is to say people are able or have got the space to express themselves without fear or favor. And also it enables the various rights of people to be upheld and people to enjoy such privileges. Economic indicators. They are statistics that show economic progress of a country. These include GDP per capita, employment rates, and industrial output. These are economic indicators. Gross domestic product, what is that? It is the total monetary value of all finished goods and services produced within a country's borders in a specific time or a period, usually a year. So we're saying that in order to understand the viability or economic performance of a country, GDP is usually used or is mostly used as a key indicator. If we look into the monetary value of all finished goods the country has produced over a period of a year, we are also able to ascertain the level of development of that country. So gross domestic product per capita, that is total value of goods and services produced in a country divided by its population. Having to say that to say how much has been produced over a period of a year over its total population, it essentially represents the average income or economic output per person in a nation. It actually identifies that. And then serving as an indicator of living standards and economic well-being. You understand? So what I want you to understand is that GDP per capita, it actually tries to ascertain the equivalence that is there between population and production taking place. How much are we producing versus the total number of people who are within a country? So having that equitable, it might as well indicate and means that the country is in a healthy state. So per capita basically simply means per person. If you are talking about per capita, it basically means per person to say how much production taking place per person, and then GDP per capita is calculated by dividing the total GDP of a country by its total population, which I already have mentioned there to say that we are able to identify the per capita production by checking the total production over the total population as a finding that index. Social indicators, statistics, and other data used to measure and assess the quality of life, well-being of a person within a specific area. We are saying we're still under development. Development can also be measured by social indicators, which are statistics and other data used to measure and assess the quality of life and the well-being of a population within a specific area. That can also be within a country. These indicators we actually they actually help monitors they actually help monitor social systems, identify changes. We can as well identify changes and guide intervention to improve societal conditions. So in that case, we are saying social indicators, they actually or they give us an understanding of the disparities or gaps that are existing within a community or within a given place. Social indicators are used to track progress towards social goals. How much is happening with regards to social goals? How much has been attained, such as reducing what? We look at reducing poverty, improving health, and enhancing education. These also are good social indicators which can be tracked and be used to scale the level of development the country has attained. Healthy, common social indicators, we can talk about healthy. which we talk about life expectancy, infant mortality rate, the number of children that are dying, access to health care, as I mentioned before, education. We talk about how many people are able to read and write, that is literacy rates, school enrollment rates, as to say, the enrollment rates versus we also identify the progression, how many learners entered into the national curriculum or registration, and what is the standardized test scores. We can look into this. If a person is said he has passed, what is it that he has reached, or what, how much has he attained? So therefore, it is also a social indicator of development in a country. And then living conditions, we also identify them to understand what development, access to safe water and sanitation, housing quality, food security. They all identify what development, living conditions. Clean water must be readily available to people, and sanitation, the disposal of waste in terms of sewage and so forth. Housing quality, people should stay in proper housing that are planned and having all the other social service facilities that must be there, electricity, water, and all those, which also have to mean that people can eventually have food security, access to health feeding at relevant times as much as it is necessary. So therefore, quality food is available for people every time and whenever it is needed. Social inclusion. Social inclusion, we look at unemployment rates, crime rates, and participation in elections in a developed country. Or when we look at development, or we are assessing development, unemployment rates are also used to ascertain that how many people are working and how many are not. Crime. Crime also identifies development in terms of a country's rate of, the rate of development in other ways. So what I'm saying is that we need to understand that participation in elections, also social inclusion, which is a good indicator of development. In a country that is well developed, people will have freedom to participate. They are able to choose and appoint democratic leaders who are able to run and do things on their behalf without coercion and fear or so forth. That are also good, that are also quite relevant examples in terms of that sustainable development, as to say that development that must meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. It actually balances economic growth, social needs, and environmental protection. So, in terms of development, sustainable development remains a key fundamental uh, expectation, or it becomes a key, it remains a key target to achieve. That what has to be done today must not compromise generations to come, as you should understand that uh, our resources sometimes are what are non-renewable. In other ways, also we need to understand that people livelihoods have to continue. So compromisation of the ability of future generation must not be there. Production must occur, but without having harm and danger in uh, generations to come. And then rural development, obviously, we talked about that, improving the standards of living of people living in inland areas, which are rural areas, through better housing, schools, and job opportunities, which we said that at the end of the day, the primary reason is also to reduce rural urban migration. So please understand again that there is an understanding which you need to have when you go to exams. Development, in summary, it actually focuses on improving the standards of living, the quality of life, and also key terms that are involved there is that it includes developed and developing countries' standards of living, quality of life, economic and social indicators, sustainable development. These ones, as you go and prepare yourself towards every exam, or whether it's testing and so forth, there are key terminologies that you need to understand. And these terms actually they help geographers to measure and compare levels of development and find ways to reduce poverty, as well as uh, understanding that poverty must not be a key inclination in rural or inland areas. So as we are almost going to the end, last but not least, I want you to understand that the inland context, South African perspective, is to set the rural context in the South African reference. So in South Africa, the concept of development especially includes rural or inland development, which focuses on improving conditions in remote or less developed areas far from major coastal cities. These include what are those perspectives, what are those expectations or standards? Building roads, talk about providing access to schools and clinics, creating local job opportunities. I'm sure you have heard of manpower development projects, supporting and sustainable land use, recycling of waste. These are key examples. We can talk about rural development programs in inland provinces like Limpopo and Eastern Cape help communities by providing access to water. These are key examples that I've just given you for you to take note of. Roads, clinics, and schools. Actually, these uplift people's standards of living and quality of life. We have got South Africa rural development, which focuses on bringing these improvements to underdeveloped areas away from coastal cities to reduce the inequality between uh, uh, rural and urban regions that I also have mentioned there. And then just last but not least, we talk about the industrial countries. Industrial countries are those with large manufacturing and industrial sectors that contribute significantly to their economy. And these countries are usually developed because industrialization, it creates jobs, raises income, improves infrastructure. I gave got typical examples of Germany, China, and the United States of America, which we need to understand that industrialization is an important and integral part of development. In South Africa, expanding industries to inland provinces can help balance between can help balance development, create jobs where they are most needed. Therefore, jobs remains and they are available. So in grade 11 syllabus, it is very important to know that inland areas in South Africa, like the Limpopo, Northwest Free State provinces, are often less developed than urban coastal areas such as Cape Town and Durban. You shall see this as we go to economic geography, grade 12 again, in terms of economic development in various provinces of the South Africa as a whole. These inland areas may have limited infrastructure and then fewer industries and high unemployment. Also, rural development projects aim to close this gap by providing clean water, encouraging local industries or farming, and also infrastructural development. So basically, this is all about development, a good and sound introduction to development in South African context. Thank you very much for your time, and please don't forget to like and also uh, subscribe to this important channel of ours, such that we can continuously go and do the best. Thank you very much once again, and share to friends and families. So therefore, we remain a good community and we do the best. Thank you very much.